Welcome to Outdrive, folks. I'm your host, Cliff Callis, and each week I'm bringing you actionable marketing insights you can apply to reach, connect with, and convert rural American consumers. Outdrive is powered by Callis, a full-service advertising agency with a focus on marketing rural America. Callis offers a wide range of integrated marketing services, including website development, search engine marketing, social media, video, and digital. We develop strategic and creative campaigns to build your brand and your business, and you can learn more about us at ecallis.com. Now join me in the front seat as we head out on the road to success. Let's go. Hey folks, welcome to Outdrive. We've got another great story to share with you today about life and work in rural America. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by a guest who not only understands rural America, but is an expert in knowing what makes small towns click. Save Your Town, co-founded by today's guest, Deb Brown, helps small communities be the best they can be. She and her business partner, Becky McCrae, have made it their business to make communities more relevant and vibrant. Save Your Town coaches communities to make them better. They promote collaboration over committees and provide ideas and expertise that make rural communities join together for the common good. Best of all, these strategies and exercises can be done by everyone in the community without hefty budgets or corporate involvement. Welcome to Outdrive, Deb.
Well, hi, Cliff, and thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have you on here. Ever since I've heard about you, wanted to know more about what you're up to. I know you're an expert in rural America and in helping small communities not only survive, but thrive and grow. And I think you and I have a lot in common. And so I'm anxious to hear more about that. So let's start with you telling our audience just a little bit about yourself.
Well, sure, I've got a long history, so let's just look 20 years ago, right? I currently live in Mississippi down on the coast. I'm originally from a small town in Iowa, and last 20 years I've spent living and working in small towns and with rural people. Part of that is a social media marketing business, a consultant for a chamber, then became a communications director for that chamber and an executive director at another chamber. So I've got some history behind me with working with small towns. And then Becky and I have been working together since 2015 as the co-founders of Save Your Town.
So tell us about Save Your Town.
Well, I'd be happy to. We do a lot of things. We first started when I was a chamber director. Becky came to town to visit me because we had known each other since the late 2000s and ran across each other. We did a bloggers tour together in Hutchinson, Kansas. We co-hosted some of the 140 character conferences and stayed in touch. So when she came to visit, she looked at me and said, "I think we should do something together." And I agreed with her. I'm like, "That's a great idea. What are we going to do?" And she said, "Let's do a toolkit about pop-ups, creating pop-ups in small towns." And my first question to her was, "Do you think people are going to buy that?" And she just laughed at me and she said, "Yes, they will." And that was the beginning of it. And that pop-up toolkit is still up on our website. We do a weekly newsletter, and it's based upon rural challenges. And we know what rural challenges are because every other year we do the survey of rural challenges across the nation, and Canada and Portugal and New Zealand and Australia have all participated as well. Rural people have told us what their challenges and their assets are. And for me, that's important because there's too many people that don't know what the challenges are, and they make assumptions based on what they've heard in the media. And you really can't do that because every small town, every rural area is different. There are some commonalities, of course, but don't ever go into a town assuming you know everything about that town.
I
don't
think
like
that's
that.
I think that's great insight. I think in general that rural America is misunderstood. I think there's many people that have misconceptions or preconceived notions of what it is, and it may or may not be anything like that. And what you experience and what I experience are even different things, and we have different perspectives. But you had mentioned earlier that you grew up in a small town in Iowa. What are your takeaways from that experience?
Well, my dad, what a character. One of the first things he taught me is smart work is hard work. Everything doesn't have to break your back. Hard work's important, mind you, but do it smartly. And be kind. Be kind to people. You don't know what people are going through. And if you can spend a moment or two just listening and be kind to somebody, that matters.
Oh, those are that's great insight. You know, we do, it's interesting you mentioned hard work because hard work is a common thread, not in every one of our podcasts about rural America, but almost everyone, almost every guest talks about hard work. And of course, that's not, exclusive to rural America, right? That's everywhere. I mean, that's the way
Right.
you get ahead. But I like the idea of smart work is hard work because you're right. You don't have to do back-breaking work to get ahead, but what you do does need to be smart.
Yeah. And some of that, with technology these days and the advancement in manufacturing, some of that backbreaking work is being alleviated by the things that are going on with that advancement in the technology. So you should pay attention to that and get involved. There's a lot of talk out there about artificial intelligence. With anything, if you go in looking for the negative, you're going to find the negative. But how about going in looking for the positive and take the parts that work for you? Same kind of thing with technology. You don't have to do it all, but find what works for you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, I know you specialize in working with smaller communities. What kind of things have you learned through that process that you've then used to help other cities?
That's a very good question. So I talked about um, every town is different, but the most important thing I've learned is to listen, to really listen to what people are telling me. When I do an on-site visit where I'm in a community for 3 or 4 days, the only question I generally ask is, what do you want? And then I sit back and just listen to their answers. For example, students almost invariably say, we want a Taco Bell. Well, that's not really what they want. You have to dig a little bit deeper. What they want is some place where they can hang out with their friends. Now, if it has food or music, or if it's a third place, all of those are benefits, but it doesn't have to be a Taco Bell.
So,
Taco Bells are hard to come by, but you can do it.
yeah, I think many times we find this in our business as well. People don't really know what they want, or they may know what they want, but they aren't able to articulate it. And so that's why I agree. I think listening is so important. And I also find that curiosity for someone in our roles, because I kind of see us in a similar role, curiosity, asking the questions, why, what, are so critical to getting somebody to open up. But then once they open up, you do have to listen.
And listen with an open mind. When we have conversations with humans, when we have conversations with each other, we tend to listen for what we're going to say next instead of listening to what that person's actually saying and then ask questions based on what they've said to you. Everybody wants to be heard, everybody. And if you listen to think about what you're going to say next, you're missing half the conversation.
I
So
agree with that.
listen to what they're actually saying.
So I want to go back to something you said earlier. You mentioned pop-ups. You do
Mhm.
toolkits for pop-ups. For those of our listeners who don't know what a pop-up is, tell us.
So a pop-up can be as simple as the Historical Society setting up a table at an event and having a game for people to play, and that brings attention to their community. It could be an entrepreneur that works out of their home or their basement, second bedroom, and they go and they pop up for a month inside another business to get to test their idea out, to test the marketing, to see if they have a product that people want to buy. And you can do that either at a booth at the fair, you can do it inside another business, you can do it in an incubator space. So there's different levels of setting up a pop-up. But I'll tell you a story. My friend Sean makes the best kettle corn in the world. I promise you, it is the absolute best. And he started making it on his stove at home and just would call his friends up and say, hey, I made some kettle corn. And they all said, you need to charge for this kettle corn. So he made this big, huge pot in his front yard with a little booth around it, set it up in his front yard, and he would make it on the weekends. And he would text his friends and say, bring your $5, the kettle crack is ready. Called it kettle crack because it was addictive, right? So people were lined up to buy kettle corn from Sean. So his next step was to take that pop up. Remember, the first one was in his yard. Now he's going to take it and try it out at some events around town. So if there was a parade, he'd set it up. If there was an activity going on, we had music in the park and he would set it up there. And people loved it, absolutely loved it. He saved enough money to go ahead and buy a trailer and set up a trailer so he can expand and travel around the area selling his kettle corn only on the weekends and evenings. And that was ridiculously, it went really well. So in the wintertime, he asked the city, can we set up on the park over there in the corner where most people turn to go up to the fairgrounds? And they said, yeah, sure you can. And he wanted to try out soup and sandwiches. Well, what he found out, kettle corn was going great. Nobody buys soup portable to take it and eat in their car. Too cold to stand outside, but to take it and eat in their car. But the sandwiches went over really well. So you can see how he was testing his ideas out to see what worked and what didn't. He eventually went on to buy a local coffee shop that was for sale. And now he is a owner of that coffee shop and they have kettle corn for sale inside as well. And his kids have taken over the wagon to continue on and try that business on their own.
That's a
That's how pop-ups work.
Well, that's a great story. That's a great story. And so I see pop-ups can work as a promotional vehicle, but they can also work as a research vehicle to test what might work and what might not work. What's your perspective on utilizing research with some of the communities that you work with?
So be a little more specific. What are you looking there for?
Well, I think you've done some surveys before, right?
Ah,
So conducted
yeah,
some surveys for different communities. Talk a little bit about that, how it
absolutely. So
works.
yeah, that's the survey of rural challenges that I mentioned earlier. And we have been doing it for 10 years now. We're coming up on our 10th year anniversary. We do it biannually. And let me give you some of the results. I pulled up my spreadsheet for you so we could talk a little bit about the last survey and the results. And we have found overall the challenges that the small towns are facing, continued lack of housing, inactive downtowns or dead downtowns, population loss, kids are leaving, and this year, childcare jumped into the top 5 as well. Now, the small businesses told us it was the ongoing lack of workers and support services, usable buildings, stiff competition from online businesses, and marketing, always marketing, ranked the highest as challenges to rural small businesses. So if I'm in a community, I have a good idea, right? On what their challenges are, but I'm still going to ask them because it may not be housing, but it might only be workforce. Or it may not be either of those. It might be they can't find usable buildings. Plenty of people want to give them loans, but they need a usable building. So in asking those questions, what are you facing? What's not working for you is important to know. But it's also extremely important to know what their assets are because we can't always focus on the negative. We need to know what the good stuff is too. Now, rural people were twice as likely to say that they were optimistic about their community's future as they were negative. Defying the stereotype, that's what the media says. Their profiles of poverty, crime, drug abuse, it's primary, and that's not true. Rural people continually rank those near the bottom as community challenges. And rural businesses are innovating. They're not stuck in their ways and out of date, not all of them. The most common business assets listed in 2023 were innovative ideas and up to date marketing techniques. So now I know, okay, if I'm working with a small business, we'll have a conversation about, so what are you doing to get more people to walk through the door? And some will say, oh, we don't do anything different than we did 10 years ago. But But most will say, well, we're trying TikTok. I don't know if it's going to work, but we're trying it. So that's what I mean by innovative ideas, trying to work both locally and online to bring more people into your community and your business.
So I'm hearing you loud and clear on your challenges. And as we talk to different people from around the country about rural America, I think these are the challenges that they are communicating about. And of course, each, as you mentioned earlier, each community is different. And so they're going to have different challenges ahead of them. They're also going to have different opportunities ahead for them as well. So, what do you see and what does your research show you about the unique benefits of small town living?
Oh, well, quality of life, always, right?
Hmm.
Generally a safer place to live. Your family is there, and recreational opportunities. The locals take those recreational opportunities for granted. Oh, you can go to county conservation. They're parked over by the lake and just rent a canoe. I think it's $10 and go up on the lake with the canoe. They don't think anything about it. But for a visitor, that's kind of a big deal. And we don't talk enough about what the community has and share the resources that everybody can take advantage of.
Well, I think that's great insight. And I think about, again, some of the people that we've talked to, and I think the longer you're in a certain place, the more you take for granted what's there. And you forget that you have these maybe incredible tourism assets at your disposal. And you say to yourself, gosh, it's been 5 years since I went to XYZ. But you're right. Somebody from out of town looks at it and goes, holy cow, you have a railroad museum? I love the railroad, you know? So I love how you have framed all of that under the context of challenges of rural America and the benefits of living in small town. So as you approach a new community, a new client, talk a little bit about the process that you take them through to help them understand where they are and maybe understand what the possibilities ahead are.
Sure. So I'm going to talk about our services first because that's important to what we do in a small town. We do that free newsletter I talked about and have thousands that are signed up for it. And Becky and I take turns writing each week. We also have over 30 different videos that address rural community challenges, almost all of them under 30 minutes because nobody has that much time to watch anymore. We have a membership opportunity where an entire community or an individual can be involved as a member, both at the same price. And that's how people find us. They find us through the newsletter primarily. You know, word of mouth is still the best way to market anything. You want to give people to share what it is you do, right?
Mhm.
So communities will hear about us and listen to us, and they've reached out 10 years after being on our newsletter list. And we might get an email, oh, we listen to you all the time. We need you to come in and talk to us. So we do a little more delving. Becky does a 2-day walk around, and how that works for her is she works with those motivated people already in the community that want to see change or want to see it now. And then she'll do a keynote for the entire community based on whatever it is they want her to talk about. And when I go in, I want to talk to everybody. And so I'll work with people on the ground and say, okay, put me in front of as many people as possible. I want to go to the historical society and talk to the women that work there. I want to go to the coffee shop and talk to the old guys there. Put me in the schools because I got to talk to students, right? And anybody else, any other group or organization or leaders or business owners that you want me to visit with. And that generally takes 2, 3 days. I take a ton of notes, compile the data, and then a month later, I give a presentation, an online presentation to them about what they said they wanted. So I'm able to say, you know what? 70% of the people I talk to want to see the buildings downtown filled, the empty buildings filled. And here's a couple of projects we talked about when I was on the ground because I encourage people to get started right away. If we're in the middle of a meeting and somebody says, well, John can help with that. I will say, can you text him right now? Let's call John. Let's get started. And they just kind of look at me like, what, right now? I'm like, yeah, we'll wait, because we want people to get into action right away. And then that online presentation also shares stories of other communities already doing those things. And of course, resources that we can provide to assist them with getting started.
I can see that they'd get very excited about the
I get excited.
possibilities. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's of course that's contagious when that occurs. So, do you typically work with somebody on an ongoing basis then after that, or is it more helping them kind of establish the foundation for where they go on their own, or is it both?
So it's both, actually. It is both. We always encourage people to sign up for our newsletter if they haven't already and become a member, because they have access to those videos, and then they can host watch parties, which means they can bring people in. And what's nice about watching a video with a group of people is you can stop it and you can say, oh, let's talk about that. Do you think we could do that over here? Every once in a while, I'll jump in on a watch party if they're Zooming it, and just watch it with them and be available for questions. Now, we do have an intensive package where we work with the community for 6 months, and they end up both seeing both Becky and I at different times, and all kinds of stuff in between: the follow up, the emails, the watch parties, the access to our information, walking them through toolkits, all of that is involved in the intensive package. And it's the basic uh, components, but it's designed for whatever community we're in. It's not a, here's the package, we'll just do this. It's like, what do you need? Okay, let's figure out how to make this work for you, kind of package. And we've got 2 of those planned for this year already. And that's a 6 month progress. That's how we do that. I stay in touch with people because I want to hear their stories. I want to know, for example, Akron, Iowa was one of the first communities I went and visited, up in the northwest corner of Iowa, across the river from South Dakota. That's how far it is. A small town. And one of the things they hosted was a plant your flag party where they invited anybody that wanted to come and have a conversation about what they wanted in their community. And they literally had flags in front of people. So you could say, one person wanted to create new access to the river so that they can bring canoes and stuff down in a certain location. Another one wanted more restaurants in town, more food in town. And then you'd go to the flag that you were interested in. And if you weren't interested in those, you had your own. So, of course, I wanted to hear about what they were doing and what was happening. So, the mayor, who invited me into the community to begin with, about every 4 or 5 months, she sends me an email. Deb, this is what's going on. And the old bowling alley is now bought, and there's a new restaurant there. And so they stay in touch with me. And of course, if they need an article for the paper, I'll happily write it. Whatever they need and I can provide, I will do that, because they're my people. They're my people. I want to stay in touch with them.
Well, this got to be very gratifying to get an email like that every now and then.
It is. It is.
Well, I think there must be some people listening right now that are excited maybe about what you could do for them. How would they find you? What would you ask them to do if they're interested in maybe establishing a conversation or in just finding out more about your organization?
So the thing I love to do most is talk to people. If they send me an email at deb@saveyour.town, let me spell that out. It's SAVEYOUR.TOWN. Just send me an email and tell me a good time to talk to you. Give me a couple of spots this week and I'll call you back. And let's just visit first. I'm a rural person. I want to visit with you first. I want to know what it is you're looking for, what you're thinking about. And then we'll take it from there. There's no pressure with that. It's, let's just talk.
Yeah, that's that's small town way, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's a lot of that's getting lost with digital technology that everybody is growing up with today. Those one-on-one personal conversations are just not like they used to be. But if you still want to have them, you can find people that want to have them with you.
Yeah, you can. And I just also want to mention, you know how excited I am, and there are lots of people in small towns that are excited too, but they haven't found a way to really be involved. And one of the things that we emphasize is, as a leader, finding a person's reason for motivation, what motivates them, because not everyone helps for the same reason. The guys at the coffee shop, when we were doing the tour of empty buildings, I went down and visited with the old timers. You know who they are. They make up rumors just to see if they'll take hold, right?
I know
It's a
people like
joke,
that.
but they kind of do that, right? And I was talking to one old guy, and I'm like, we're doing this tour and we're going to showcase our empty buildings downtown. And his reaction was, that's never going to work. What are you talking about, Deb? No people are going to come here and look at empty buildings. I'm like, okay, well, let's talk a little bit. And I asked him, I'm like, where's your daughter at? Well, she's in Des Moines. I'm like, well, what would it be like if her and her family could move back home and start their own business in one of those empty buildings? I found his reason for motivation. You could see the light bulb going off because he thought about that. It wasn't about him, it was about what he could do for his family. And he became a big proponent of what we were doing. And then I want you to think about, for everybody listening, everybody can have a small but meaningful way to participate. We talk about people that are shut in and can't really get out. The majority have telephones. Ask them to call three of their friends and share about the event that's coming up in a month. That's all. Ask them. That matters because those three friends are going to call somebody else and word will spread. And that person that's shut in and can't get out the way they want to has surely made a difference, whether it's by old fashioned telephone or it's by some sort of online capability. That matters.
That's a great
Give
idea.
everybody a reason to participate, an easy way, a meaningful way.
That's a really great idea. You talk about motivation, and of course, you and I both know how important that is to almost everything we do in our lives. What motivates you? What drives you to do what you're doing today?
It's what I'm doing today. I'm a small town girl at heart, and seeing small towns succeed and do wonderful things in their community excites the heck out of me because it's easier than what people think. And if I can share ways to do that or stories of other communities doing that, number one, I get to talk to a lot of people, and I love that. I am, yes, an extrovert most of the time, but I'm also excited to see my fellow humans doing work that matters to them. I'm not going in and doing the work, I'm just helping them find the kind of things they can do that matter to them. They have everything they need. They literally, those small towns have everything they need at this point to do what they want to do.
So how do you
I
how do
just
you
help
help
them
them
see that.
understand? How do you help them understand that?
Oh, storytelling. It's always about storytelling. I mean, I could give them facts till the cows come home, data, facts, all of that. But facts tell and the stories sell. So explaining what somebody else did in another community is so important because number one, they can see it's possible. And number two, they can get ideas from it. And then thirdly, they can make it their own so that it works in their community.
So what's the first thing you do when you go into a new community? What's the very first thing you do? How do you get started?
I usually go in the day before and drive around and take pictures. And I want to see good stuff and I want to see just my impression of the community. I look for the good stuff, but I also look for the stuff that could have a little bit of assistance. So then the next day, whoever has organized this on the ground, of course, we meet with them. The majority of people want to take me on a drive around because people want to showcase their town, right?
Sure.
So that's I encourage, let's have 7 or 8 people in this van and let's take a drive around. Let's take a look at what it is or a walk around that you have in your small town. And then we'll just have conversations about, oh, that's an empty building. That would be great for, and giving them an idea or start a conversation. In one small town in Minnesota, I noticed that they had lots of buildings where, like, this guy stored his tractors there. It was a storage building for his business in another location. But you didn't know that. There was nothing on the doors or no nameplates. You had no idea. It was just another building, right? And we got to talking about it. And I'm like, what if you put your business name on there? What if you showed a little bit of pride in what it is you have? You have a business out on the highway, but you also have more business here in town where you store your tractors. So let people know that you're doing okay. Let people know these aren't empty buildings. Let people know you're not hoarding, because we see a lot of that too. Hoarding's a strong word, but you collecting is a better word. Um, and that makes a difference in a community when you drive around and you see how many businesses there are. Just little things like that. I have outside eyes. I don't live there, so I tend to see things a little bit quicker than they do.
Well, I think that's a great point. I think that outside perspective, you're coming in fresh, you have no preconceived ideas, and you have the experience of working with lots of other communities where you've seen things work and you have stories to
Mhm.
tell about how you can do this and this can happen as a result. But that outside perspective is so important. We see it in our business as well.
And the, Becky has created the idea friendly method based on her work and our work, and it's really simple. We work with communities to utilize this idea friendly method. You start with your big idea. What do you want in town? Do you want a splash pad in town, right? Well, that's great. Start with gathering people, gather your crowd, people that think like you. So maybe it's a group of moms that want a splash pad because there's no pool or splash pad. There's no place for them to do anything. Well, ask folks to come over on a Sunday afternoon in the summer and take out the sprinklers and bring their kids and let the kids run through the sprinklers. And the parents can sit around and talk, maybe have a beer or a soft drink, right? Now you've brought people together that are kind of thinking alike. They like this idea, and excitement starts to generate. Kids are loving it. That's your first test, right? The kids are loving it. And if it's 85, 90 degrees out, there's some adults over there in the water too. The next step is build connections. So you need to know, can we do this and how can we do this? And who else knows more about this? Because you're going to have to talk to a city manager or the city council just to see if it's possible. Don't ask for permission. Just talk to see if it's possible. Save that permission stuff for later. And the third step is take small steps. So you've already taken one small step where you tried the idea out. What other small steps can you take? Go up on Facebook and say, hey, what do you think about a splash pad? What are the pros and cons? And just start talking about it and building it and use the idea friendly method. It will eventually accomplish something, sometimes quicker than slower.
Once again, those are really great ideas, very usable, very practical things that people can do that don't have to cost a lot of money. Do a little research and get some momentum building and get people moving in the same direction to get stuff done. You've mentioned your partner Becky McRae several
Mhm.
times, and you've talked a little bit about yourself, which I wanted you to, and I'm glad. Tell us about Becky.
Ah, Becky's phenomenal. Lots of people know her from the website smallbizsurvival.com that got started in the mid 2000s. She started it because she owned a small business in a town of about 5,000 people. And she wanted to find out how to be successful, how to survive, and how to be successful at it. So she's been writing and has guest writers on that site for almost 20 years. Wow. For a long time. Smallbizsurvival.com. She has been a former city administrator of a town. She is involved in many organizations, and her and her husband own a cattle ranch. So she's very definitely rural and is called upon from lots of national organizations to come and keynote and talk about things like the idea friendly method and what small towns can do to survive and the work that we do.
Well, sounds like you guys make great partners, very powerful partnership.
Yeah, we're just enough different and we get along. So those are two things that are important, right?
Very, very important. Well, I love the inbound marketing that you're doing to attract people to you through your writing and your newsletters and your videos. And I'm sure many people are finding you that way. Do you do outbound marketing as well? Do you reach out to try to attract different types of new customers or audiences?
I don't know if I'd call it outbound marketing. Yes, I mean we do stuff online with social media, of course. We are finding, particularly with small rural communities, that trust is the first element to hiring someone to come in and work with you. If they're not likable and trustable, you're not going to get hired, or you're going to get hired and nothing's going to work because you haven't developed that rapport, that commonality, that trust. So by starting with newsletters and answering emails and being on LinkedIn and answering questions there, and Facebook and phone calls. I get phone calls all the time. I love them. I also provide coaching too. So there are some communities that just need help with one project. Just give me a call, we'll figure it out. But the outbound marketing, just I'll be the first one to go to a small town, drive around and look and see who I can talk to, and follow up with a letter, an actual letter, or an email inviting them to participate in our newsletter.
Yeah. Well, you're reaching out to people that you have identified having a need, which is
Hmm.
really what good marketing is all about, right?
Yeah, and I just don't want to be swarmy, I don't want to be spammy. You should hire us. Like, I know they should, but that sounds awful, right? This is not a circus. This is somebody's life. Let's treat it respectfully.
Yeah. Well, the key really between selling and marketing, right? And you mentioned it earlier about trust, and we find that is so important as well. And we market based on the idea that people do business with people they know, like, and trust. And so you have to
Amen.
first get them to know who you are, and then secondly, hopefully like what you do and how you're doing it, and what you're all about, what you stand for. And then you get that opportunity maybe to have them trust you with a project that can help really both of you. So I love the adage of know, like, and trust.
And I think it's important too that communities invest in themselves. There's lots of free things out there, and it's good to take advantage of some of that. But you'll come to a point where you want to spark people's motivation and ideas, and decide if this is worth it by investing in your community. Spend a little bit of money and bring in people that can actually help you.
So you have done a great job of weaving in stories about some of the communities you've worked with in our conversation today, and I love that. Give us one more success story that you're maybe very proud of, or that has a special place in your heart.
Well, Columbiana, Ohio is one of my most favorite towns I've been to. I went there and visited a group of small towns in Ohio through a project with a larger organization, and showed up in Columbiana. And the city manager, just amazing, just an amazing guy. And he really wanted to help his community. And during our walk around, I noticed that there were empty buildings that looked in decent shape, but why in the world were they empty, right? So we had a conversation, and one of those buildings had the front window was boarded up, and the owner of it was a real estate agent, and he actually wanted to have a restaurant of some sort in there because they needed restaurant entertainment downtown. And he couldn't tell me why the window was boarded up. I mean, it was broken, obviously, but why hadn't he replaced it? So I said, well, let's just call him. Let's make an appointment. And he was like, I suppose we could, but he's really hard to get a hold of. I'm like, give me his number. And I called him. He answered the phone, first of all. And we made an appointment for lunch the next day and went and visited him with a couple of other people from the community. He had not repaired the window because he was waiting for the tenant so he could repair it to spec. So whoever was going to rent that building, he wanted to make sure it worked for them, that they had a say in what that front window was going to look like. So we had the conversation, well, let's put some art on it. Let's figure out something to do so it looks more appealing. And it was one of the suggestions that ended up in my report at the end of the visit. And I get a message from the city manager, Lance, who said, oh, here's what the city has done. For a nominal fee, we hired a local artist to print a scene on that window. We want entertainment and music and food. So he's going to do something about dancing and eating downtown. I'm like, that's great. And then Lance, smart guy that he is, but Deb, it gets better. We're going to have him do it during a street festival where the downtown is blocked off. And they now have this law in Ohio where you can walk around with your cocktail if the streets are blocked off. So we're going to have this big street festival and have the artist do the work then. I'm like, oh, that's a brilliant idea. More people will come to see him work. They'll get a chance to tour the building. And that is exactly what happened. It turned into just a brilliant idea by involving more people, not just Lance, but the artists and people that came to visit, and everybody had ideas. It was a fun time for folks, right? And that town, Columbiana, has gone on to 2 years ago, they were elected as the friendliest town in the United States. And it happened because one of the residents got the idea that they should write into the Reader's Digest, who was sponsoring this, to nominate themselves for their local movie theater. It was bought by a young couple and does live performances. And the people doing the performances are special needs, handicapped, a different kind of actors group. And that just everybody started coming up. Oh, we do this too. And we have this. And have you thought about that? The town is just growing by leaps and bounds because people see the vision. They see the reasons for living there. And it started from just a little on-site visit from Deb Brown.
That is a great story. Deb,
It's a great town.
I've really enjoyed visiting with you today. I could see where you can really help communities with your experience and your ideas and your passion, obviously, for
Thank
what
you.
you're doing. I think you've given our listeners really a lot of practical ideas that they could try on their own and maybe a little bit of inspiration for that big idea that might, take them to the next level. But as we wrap up today, what else would you like to share with our audience that you think they might find interesting or maybe inspiring?
Well, I want people to think about what they're doing in their own community, what matters to them. The work that I do is uniquely doable. I come in and work with you, or even through our newsletters. It doesn't have to be me visiting your community. What we do is doable actions that you can take. Get started now. There are so many easy things you can do. So many easy things. In fact, this month, both Becky and I are writing about an article she wrote, 99 things to do free or cheaply in a small town. Sign up for the newsletter and you'll get some newsletters about it, plus a whole list of things you can do for very little money.
That's great advice. Great advice. Deb, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Cliff. It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Folks, thanks for listening to Outdrive. I hope you've enjoyed our visit today with Deb Brown, co-founder of Save Your Town. Come back again next week and I'll take you down the roads of rural America where it's heaven on earth.
Thanks for taking a ride with us on Outdrive. This episode is complete, so head on over to ecallis.com for more insight you can apply to help drive your business growth. And be sure to sign up for our free monthly e-letter, Outthink, for even more helpful content about marketing to rural America. Have a great day and keep on driving.